Today, we have special guests from the solution, operation, finance, and integrations teams to walk us through the functionalities of our upcoming 2.3 version, which will be rolled out on August 12th. With that, let's welcome our first special guest, Daniel Lemos, product owner of the solutions team.
Ready? Perfect. Hi, nice to meet you all. In version 2.3, we're launching the source switching functionality. This will be rolled out gradually, meaning not all users will have access to the feature from day one. If you need it enabled, you can reach out to your CSM or account executive so they can activate this new functionality for you. Why did we create the source switching feature? We received a lot of feedback from users saying that when using templates in the Symmetric system, they wanted to reuse existing sources already configured in the workspace. So basically, this new feature will allow users to upload a template and connect it to a source that already exists in the workspace. The goal is to reuse already configured structures, whether in the same or a different workspace. This will help speed up configuration processes and reduce friction by avoiding the need to recreate sources from templates. Now, let's take a look at a live demo of the functionality. As you know, the template section has two parts, download and upload. The main change, and how you'll know whether you have the source switching feature enabled, happens during the upload process. Previously, when uploading a template, it was immediately processed. Now, you'll see three options: a summary of what was uploaded, who uploaded it, note that no resources have been created yet in the workspace, then you'll see the edit option, and finally, apply. As mentioned, the summary won't show anything extra. From there, you can either apply the template directly or review it to make edits and swap sources. In the edit section, you'll see on the left all the resources the template will create. You'll see details of all resources, and for now, the only editable ones will be source type resources that the template is trying to configure. On the right, you'll see all the reference columns the template requires, and you'll be able to select an existing source in your workspace and map its columns to the required ones for the template to work. We're ensuring all required fields for the template structure exist. Therefore, the selected source must have at least the same number or more columns. If it has fewer columns than required, the swap won't be allowed. At a minimum, it must match or exceed the number of columns. If you select an existing source, AI will automatically match its columns with the required ones. In this example, we got a perfect match. That might not always happen, but we'll give you feedback if any columns weren't matched or if there are formatting issues. Always check that the columns are correct. Then you can apply the template and the resources and structures will be created. As a reference, it's important to note that you can still execute the template without any edits, just like before. All sources will still be created, and you'll see the same screen showing the resources created by the template. That's all for solutions and the new features now available.
We welcome our special guest from the operations and finance team, Marcela Diaz, product owner.
For this new version, we want to let you know that we've implemented changes to the filter logic to slightly improve the filtering experience you currently have in the tool, specifically in the spreadsheets when viewing a table within Symmetric. This feature rollout will be gradual, meaning you won't see the changes immediately upon deployment. Instead, the functionality will become available in the days following the deployment. However, everyone will eventually have access to it. We've also implemented the ability to schedule the execution of group union processes. Group union is a functionality that allows us to consolidate groupings. The activation of this scheduling feature is immediate, and we will go into more detail on this shortly. We also performed a refactor of the group source union configuration view. This refactor will also be rolled out gradually in the days following the deployment, but again, everyone will eventually see the updated version. Now, regarding the new filtering logic, why did we implement it? The idea is to provide you with a better version of the filters. It's a logic that will allow you to find data faster and with better system response times. This was also done to improve the performance of the current filters. Our main goal is to enhance the speed and efficiency of the filters so that you can perform more advanced searches more quickly. Now, if we look at the video here, you'll notice a different view than what you currently see in filters. You can still filter by condition and by value. we've added additional conditions to the filter such as greater than, less than, and less than or equal to, so you can filter date ranges using a single filter. We also added the OR condition. Previously, we only had the AND condition. Now you can filter by OR across different values. For example, if a value equals X or Y or Z, you can now apply those different filters. It's important to note that you cannot apply and/or conditions at the same time within the same filter. They must be applied separately. For example, you cannot say, if a record equals Y and another record equals Z, or another record equals X. Filters must be applied separately within a single column. You can apply the AND condition in one column and the OR condition in another column. That is allowed. It's also important to keep in mind that if you have filters applied by condition and then switch to filtering by value within the same modal, the filters will be lost. You cannot apply both a condition filter and a value filter at the same time, so you must choose one or the other. If you switch between them, the previously set filters will be cleared. If you refresh the page, just like it works today, or if you switch to another view and haven't saved the filter as a reconcilable group, those filters will be lost. Filters are only retained when saved as a reconcilable group. As I mentioned earlier, this new filter view is expected to provide better performance in terms of response times, and also to give you a wider range of filtering options. You'll be able to filter by more conditions and perform more specialized filters to find your data faster and achieve more relevant results. Again, I want to reiterate that filters will be cleared if you switch to another view, table, source, or reconciliation. Also, switching between condition and value filters will remove the applied filters. That's something important to keep in mind. If you have any questions about this functionality, let us know. Also, the current filter options like is not empty will remain. They're not going away. You'll still see them in the condition filter selector. Additionally, we've added an option to filter all invalid dates or all values other than invalid dates within a column. This is to help you more easily find data that needs to be formatted differently to be properly visualized. That's now also included in the list of options, along with the ones you already use today in the condition filter selector. All right, our next functionality is the scheduling of group union executions. Currently, and I'll recap for those who may not be familiar, we have a feature in our tool called consolidations. This functionality allows us to group sets of reconciliations. In other words, we can merge them. That's why it's called group unions, because we're uniting different groupings so they can be updated when a reconciliation is executed. As it works today, the user must manually execute that update. What we've done here is provide the user with the option to schedule up to 5 execution times per consolidation so that these updates happen automatically. Our goal with this new feature, this enhancement to the existing functionality, is to automate processes so that we don't need someone to run the reconciliation manually every time. Instead, it can happen automatically. Remember, Symmetric is designed to automate processes that typically require manual work, so this new feature helps us move in that direction, automating this specific process. Now, when you create a group or grouping, you'll see a clock icon appear at the top. This is where you'll be able to schedule execution times for the consolidation. You can choose the time when you'd like it to run. The system will use the time zone or UTC configured in your browser. For example, if your browser is set to Bogota or Lima time, it will use that. If it's set to a different UTC offset, it will use that time instead. You can schedule up to 5 executions per consolidation. For example, you could schedule 5 executions in a single day, but that's not recommended. It's not considered a best practice because, again, you only get 5 total per consolidation. What does this mean? If I schedule all 5 executions on Monday, then I won't be able to schedule any more for that consolidation. The 5 slots are used up. To emphasize, if you schedule 2 on Monday, for example, one at 8 a.m. and another at 9 a.m., you'll only have 3 remaining slots to use for that consolidation. If you schedule one on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday, and one on Friday, that's your full 5. If you schedule all 5 on the same day at different times, you won't be able to schedule any additional automatic executions for that consolidation. It's also important to clarify that this does not remove the manual execution option. In other words, if I schedule an automatic execution for Wednesday at 11 a.m., but I also want to go in and manually run the consolidation today in the afternoon, I can still do that. The manual option remains fully available. This is simply an additional feature that gives users the option to schedule consolidations to run automatically.
And finally, we decided to refactor the view for configuring unions. Currently, when you configure a union, there's a specific interface you use, for example. When you choose which columns you want to include in the union or which data sources you want to merge. As of today, that view looks a certain way. What we decided to do was refactor that view to improve both the user experience and performance. Right now, when some users try to edit a configuration, the view may not load properly or get stuck because it's too heavy. What we aim to do is prevent this from continuing to happen and offer a cleaner interface, so it loads faster and users don't run into issues when editing a configuration, or even when creating one from scratch. This new view looks like what you see here on the screen. You can still add sources as usual. The functionality itself remains unchanged. I want to be clear about this. Nothing changes in terms of how union execution works. This is purely a visual update. Everything you can do today in union configurations, you'll still be able to do. We haven't removed anything, we've just improved the look and added some new helpful features. So what did we add? You now have the option to add all columns from a data source at once. When you add a source, you can choose to include all its columns. Just a reminder from our previous release, the maximum number of columns per source is 40. So, if you select Add All Columns, and that exceeds 40, only the first 40 columns will be added. You still have the Suggested Columns feature, which recommends columns to include based on matches found between the sources you're joining. That feature hasn't changed. You can also add a column but deactivate it, meaning it won't be included in the resulting union data. This is something that already exists in union configuration and continues to be supported. Lastly, keep in mind, the limit remains at 20 sources per union. This implementation still respects that limit. The interface will notify you if you exceed the number of allowed sources or columns, showing you how many you've added so you can stay within the permitted limits.
Please remember that it's very important to clearly identify which columns you actually want to add. Also, make sure to use the suggestion agent, which not only recommends columns based on matches, but also performs a validation in the background. This helps you identify potentially important columns you may have overlooked. Be mindful of which reconcilable group you need, and whether you really need to include the entire data source. Also, consider which reconcilable groups you need to filter. Keep in mind that once the union is saved, you won't be able to modify the reconcilable group or the data source. You also won't be able to change the column type, meaning the data type, from the configuration. This is because doing so could affect your reconciliation or the process that the union triggers. So that's important to remember. That would be all. Just to reiterate, this is a visual change only. The core functionality remains the same. It should not affect any of the unions you've already created. This update is purely aimed at improving your user experience when building unions. And that's it from me, team. I'll now hand it over to my next colleague.
All right, let's continue. So, from the operations and finance side, the analysis part.
Hello everyone, how's it going? Alright, if you'd like, from the analysis side, the updates we have for you are really about one functionality we want to tell you about, which is some logs we'll be adding. Or rather, some actions we'll be adding to the activity history. For those who might not be familiar with this feature, it's a list of actions or events that occur in the tool, changes in configurations or critical changes in any of the processes you have set up within Symmetric. The idea here is to give you visibility on who executed a change and when they did it, especially if it could impact one of your use cases. The main change we're adding is that we'll be including 7 new logs in addition to the list you already have available. For those who don't know this part, as shown in the demo, the new logs we're adding are related to custom roles. As you know, a couple of versions ago, we introduced custom roles, allowing you to select which permissions should be assigned to each role. So, we'll now start showing or recording when a custom role is created, edited, renamed, or deleted. These actions can only be performed by account administrators or user administrators. We'll also include 3 logs related to when permissions are assigned to a specific user. For example, if I try to assign permissions to Lorena, there will be a record stating, Felipe assigned permission to Lorena on a specific date, and here's the role assigned, whether it's a custom role you created previously or one of the default roles that come with the tool or are created directly by Symmetric. Basically, this is the activity history and how you'll see each of these records. You'll have visibility over the creation, editing, deletion, and renaming of a custom role, as well as permission assignment, revoking a user's access, and editing the role assigned to a specific user. What's not included or what's out of scope for this feature? We won't be recording any account-level permissions at this time. We're only recording permissions at the workspace level. Because the activity history exists within each workspace, it functions completely independently. This means you'll have visibility of all permission changes within that workspace. However, changes made at the account level, such as assigning another administrator, will not be recorded. Another important thing to note is that logs will start recording from the release of this version onwards. So, if I currently have a permission in a workspace today, there will be no historical log showing what permission I was assigned and who assigned it. If, after the release, that permission gets edited, then from that moment on, any change or creation will be recorded.
To wrap up, we'll continue with our integration segment. Our special guest today is Gabriela Rivera, product owner of this project.
Hello, how are you? Well, on the integration side, we have a small improvement that delivers quite a bit of value for the export feature. Starting with the August release, it will be possible to fully customize the columns that appear in the export output file. This means that the old columns we always set by default, which always had the event prefix, can now be removed and reordered among the other columns in the output file. We're making this change mainly because we know that several of our clients have automations that rely on this type of information and expect to receive it in a specific structure. With this change, those columns will still appear as pre-selected on the right-hand side, but you'll now be able to reorder them, remove them, and select on demand only the ones you need. These columns mainly provide visibility into the element itself. Basically, what happened at the system level and within the flow. When creating your export, you'll still follow the same form as today. Give it a name, choose a resource type, and select a base resource, which is essentially the specific table on which we'll generate the data. You'll still select the event export mode and triggers. But in step 2, in the columns component on the right-hand side, the pre-selected columns can now be removed 100% of the time. You can choose only the ones you need, and you can reorder or mix them with the other columns belonging to the resource. This way, the client has full flexibility to create a completely customized export-output file. The rest of the process remains exactly the same as it is today. Choose the output size, format, and destination for receiving the information, confirm the data, and the export will be active as usual. Additionally, as mentioned, this change will take effect starting with the August release, and it will apply to all resources that have event-type columns. This mainly occurs with source-type resources and standard reconciliations. For others, we don't always have them, and when we do, there was already flexibility to reorder and remove them. One important note, this configuration will only apply going forward from the release date. It will not affect any existing exports you currently receive. However, if a user needs to modify older exports, they'll have the option to edit that export and remove or reorder the columns.
All right, with this, we'll conclude today's Connect session. We truly appreciate everyone's participation in this space, and we hope it has been very valuable for you to get an early look at the upcoming updates for the next release on August 12th. If you have any questions, remember that our team will be closely monitoring and ready to address any doubts or comments you may have. See you next time.